program is the Active Center.
All right, today we are tackling probably the single most important number in all of economics. You hear about it on the news constantly, gross domestic product, or GDP. It's basically the world's economic report card. But what is it really telling us? Let's get into it. I mean, think about that for a second. How on earth would you even begin to measure the health of an entire country's economy? You've got hundreds of millions of people buying, selling, and making stuff every single day. It's a huge, huge question. And for decades, the main answer has been GDP. It's our economic thermometer. So, let's start with the absolute basics. What exactly is this number that has so much influence over financial markets and government policy? Let's get a nice, clear definition down. And there you have it. GDP is the big one, the grand total. It's the final price tag on everything a country makes in a single year. We're talking about everything from a brand new car to a simple haircut, from building a skyscraper to your morning latte. If it's a final product or service made inside that country's borders, boom, it gets counted. It's really the ultimate economic snapshot.
Now, a massive number like GDP isn't just pulled out of thin air. It's actually made up of several key parts. To really get it, we've got to look at the four main ingredients that all get added together.
So when you look at this chart, one thing just jumps right out at you, doesn't it? Look at that gigantic slice for consumption. For decades, what you and I, the consumers, spend has made up roughly 2/3 of the entire economy. It's the main engine, and it's not even close. A good way to think about these four parts is to picture a giant national shopping cart. First up, you've got consumption, which economists call C. That's all the stuff we households buy. Then you add in investment, or I. That's what businesses are spending on new factories and equipment. Next, you have government spending, G. Things like roads, schools, and national defense. And finally, you toss in net exports, which is just what we sell to other countries minus what we buy from them.
Okay, but it's not quite as simple as having just one GDP number. To make things a little more interesting, economists actually use a few different flavors of GDP, and each one is designed to tell a slightly different story about what's going on in the economy.
So this is a really crucial one to understand, the difference between nominal and real GDP. See, nominal GDP is just the raw number, the value of everything at whatever today's prices are. But what if prices just went up? That's where real GDP is so important. It's adjusted for inflation, so we can actually see if we really produced more stuff or if things just got more expensive. So whenever you're comparing economic growth over many years, real GDP is the number that truly matters.
And the family doesn't stop there. There's also GDP per capita, which is where you take that big economic pie and divide it by the number of people. It gives us a pretty rough idea of a country's standard of living. Then there's the GDP growth rate. That's the one you always hear about, which tells us how fast the economy is growing or shrinking. And finally, there's something called PPP, or Purchasing Power Parity. It helps us make better apples-to-apples comparisons by adjusting for the fact that $1 in one country can buy a lot more or less than $1 somewhere else.
All right, so you've met the different parts and the different types. Now let's just peek under the hood and look at the math behind it all. I promise, it's way simpler than you probably think. It's pretty much just addition. And this is it, the famous expenditure formula. GDP equals C for consumption, plus I for investment, plus G for government spending, plus X for exports, minus M for imports. That's the whole engine we were just talking about, all laid out in one simple equation.
So let's just plug in some numbers here to see how it works. We'll start with that biggest piece, consumption, at say $10 trillion. Then we add business investment, maybe $2 trillion. After that, we add in government spending of $3 trillion. And finally, we add our net exports. In this case, that's $1.5 trillion in exports minus $0.5 trillion in imports. And there you have it. You add it all up and you get a GDP of $16 trillion. It's just a staggering number when you think about it, right? It represents the combined economic hustle of an entire nation for a whole year. But, and this is a big but, here's the most critical part of this whole explainer. For all of its power, GDP is absolutely not a perfect measure. It's a tool, and like any tool that has some really significant blind spots, understanding those is just as important as understanding the number itself. So, what exactly does this powerful number miss? Well, it turns out a lot. It completely ignores the massive informal economy. All the cash jobs, the volunteer work, the housework that keeps society humming along.
It only counts things that happen inside a country's borders, so it can miss the full impact of global companies. And maybe the most important blind spot of all, GDP tells you the size of the economic pie, but it tells you absolutely nothing about how that pie is sliced up. It is completely blind to wealth and income inequality.
And this quote right here just nails the central problem perfectly. A country can look incredibly rich on paper, with a super high GDP per capita, while at the same time, a huge number of its people are really struggling. GDP measures economic activity, not well-being. It's a measure of our output, not necessarily our welfare.
And that leads us with this final, really crucial question. GDP has been the king of all economic metrics for the better part of a century. But if it's missing these huge, important parts of the story, what comes next? What should we be measuring to truly understand if a country and its people are actually thriving? That's the real challenge for the next generation of economists. Something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.